رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين، ولعنة الله الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبدالله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. Kindly recite a salawat and come forward to allow way. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Continuing from yesterday, there is a tale amongst the Sufis that there was a hunter who went out on a hunt, but he heard a nightingale singing, and he was distracted by her and captured her instead. He brought the bird back and placed the bird within the cage. The bird lost its zest to sing, and it became extremely saddened within the cage. Once the hunter, the man who owned the bird, asked the bird, "What has become of you?" And the bird said to him that I have lost the will to live. He said, "Well, what can I do for you? How can I reinstill the want of life within you so that you may sing once again?" The bird stated, "If you go back into the woods, ask my comrades, my fellow birds, that this is my state. What is the answer?" He went back and he met with those birds, and he asked one of them that your friend asks this of you. No sooner had he asked, what happened was that the bird fell from on top of the branch to the ground and died. And the man was baffled by this scene. He came back, and the bird within the cage asked him, "What response did you come back with?" And he stated, "I saw something very strange." And the bird said, "Well, what was that?" And he said, "Well, no sooner that I had posed the question, your friend died and fell off the tree." As soon as the bird heard this, it too fell from the perch on the base of the cage. The man cried, then opened the door of the cage and took the bird. As soon as he took the bird, it flapped its wings and flew away. The moral here is that it understood the answer, that the answer to its problems were its own life and its own creation of that cage. And the ultimate release and liberation was to cut short its own life, and it cut short its own metaphorical life and attained true freedom. This is what we have been talking about, that we too want to find a release. What we don't know is that the release ultimately lies in us, working down to that point and effacing ourselves at that point. And then we might grow once again. And then again, there is another story. And it is so true when we introspect and look within and try to apply it within ourselves, that when a bird is within a cage and it gets its sustenance, when the door of the cage is open, the bird feels fear to come out. But as it musters courage to step out, or inquisitive nature of it impels it to come out, and as soon as it flaps its wings, when it's called to return into the cage, it never does so after tasting freedom. And this is the description given by the fourth Imam about death. He states that death is like a bird being freed from the cage. It feels fear to come out of the cage because it's so accustomed to that cage. It knows it'll get its sustenance. It knows it's within a secure environment. But as soon as the bird arrives at the door of the cage and tastes the taste of freedom, after that you may call it 1,000 times over with the enticement of sustenance, it will not return to the cage. This is what he says is death, that when you taste death, it is so liberating. It is a breath of fresh air. It is life in its full sense, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the dying person, go back into your body. Do you not see how your widow weeps for you, how your children lament for you? And the person who has died, it says to Allah, or he or she says to Allah, oh Allah, after tasting the taste of your love, what cause do I have with them? Such is what we are talking of, the real liberation, the death from within, arrival at that point where we begin to acknowledge ourselves. Now, yesterday we had left it at this point, that we need this inner state of tawadu, or we need to be humble from within. This humility in the rightest sense means the readiness, preparedness, the availability of the soul to accept difference, to accept change, to be able to become fluid and accept truth for what it is worth. And then we said after that, what we do need to adhere to is to allow ourselves to acknowledge ourselves as we are. You see, when we say to acknowledge ourselves as we are, does not mean that we become sinless. It means that we become humble enough to see ourselves as we are and to approach Allah and say to Allah, this is what I am, accept me as I am. Otherwise, it is like that verse of the Quran, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهِ يَخْدَعَهُمْ. And in another place it says, وَتَرَكَهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. They seek to deceive Allah, and Allah deceives them and leaves them in their blind ways to wander off blindly. And leaves them in their ways to wander off blindly. Imagine, even with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at times it is not us that approach Him. It is a well-shaped, fashioned personality, which is not the true personality, that arrives to Allah or at the threshold of Allah on their own terms. And this is no less than deception of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah is saying, I am not deceived, you yourself are deceived, because you have not come as your own self, you have come as somebody else. So working at that point zero, an acknowledgement means no matter what we are, we may be burdened with